So anytime I talk about Matthew Hussey in a video in some sort of critical way, I think there are some people who don't really understand why I'm talking about him, because he has a pretty squeaky clean image, and he appears, at least on the surface, to be unproblematic. And inevitably, I get um, one or two of his fans in the comments section of the video telling me that he's actually helped them a great deal and that his advice is fantastic, and asking why I am knocking him. And I just want to say that if you get value from the advice that he gives, that's great. I'm not here to diminish your experience. But the reason that I talk about him is that he's a scammer. And I don't just mean a grifter, which a lot of coaches and self-help gurus are. Most of them are grifters. But Matthew Hussey is a bona fide scammer. I have a couple of videos here on my channel talking about his scams. And the only reason that he has a squeaky clean image is because by some PR miracle, these scams have not really received wider attention just yet. Now, the reason, I think, a big part of the reason why he is as popular as he is because women really like him. They find him charming and charismatic and really personable, and of course, he's really good looking. I personally am pretty immune to his charm, but I suppose once you get scammed by someone, that's kind of going to happen. I've described my experience with his website again on the videos that I mentioned. His company would probably still be taking charges from my credit card to this day if I hadn't really pushed back against it. But you might say to me, oh, okay, well, that was several years ago. Maybe he's mended his ways since then. And, maybe he doesn't do that sort of thing anymore. Maybe he's cleaned up his act. So I just thought I'd go ahead and look on Trustpilot and see what people are saying about him. And this is kind of from very recently. Let's go ahead and I wonder if you can see that. Let's just make that a bit bigger. Okay, so I had a look at what some of the negative reviews of Matthew Hussey's products are saying. And this is what I found. Felisa says, buyer beware. Matthew's free masterclass hooks you in with great nuggets, but then bombards you with emotionally persuasive sales tactics to entice you to buy membership. I fell for it. The Love Life Club offers mostly content from Matthew's brother and others, with live events inconveniently scheduled during work hours. Feeling scammed and disappointed, this membership-based service is far from what I expected. Read the fine print before committing, and if the advertisement tells you to act now, it's more than likely a sales tactic to get people to buy based on emotion. Take your time. There's lots of free content out there. In my opinion, not a good use of my money. So Love Life Club, as far as I can tell, is the app or kind of online membership program that Matthew Hussey pushes, where you can kind of access a lot of his programs and courses and books. I don't know what the Love Life monthly subscription is, but from what I've gathered from people who claim to have been scammed in this way, it seems to be around about $70, £60, around that sort of price per month. And this is the amount that I was initially scammed with when I tried to buy just his $7 ebook. They automatically signed me up for this subscription without my permission. And we just have lots of people saying that this has happened to them. So the next review says, unethical business tactics, don't buy anything. Same exact thing happened as what people are stating below. Purchased a pamphlet for $7, but apparently that signed you up to an ongoing monthly subscription of $69.95 in addition to that. I never received or accessed the pamphlet. After calling them about the charge of $69.95, they charged me again the following month. I called my credit card and was told that the only way to assure I won't be charged again is to change my credit card number, which I did. I contacted the Hussey team again, and they stated that they will cancel the subscription and I won't be charged again. But since I had access to thousands of dollars worth of material, that they won't be giving me a refund. Well, thousands of dollars worth of material, I think that's really debatable. Scam 101. Stay away, folks, from pamphlets or anything else from this company. It's unfortunate that whatever is happening behind the scenes will ruin this company and tarnish its reputation for good. Well, at the very least, I just want people to know about this scam. So if they do decide that Matthew Hussey's advice is worth paying for, they can at least be aware that this is what could happen to them if they give their credit card information to his site. This is a scam, and Matthew Hussey has been doing this for well over a decade at this point. He's aware of it, it's intentional, and that makes him a scammer, and I'm not worried about saying that. You know, I'm not worried about any kind of legal action or anything that he might do about me saying that, because there's plenty of proof that this is going on. L. Davidson says no reimbursement was issued despite cancelling the membership within a week. This service appears highly unprofessional, especially considering their advertisement claiming that you can cancel the membership at any time. Unfortunately, this assertion is far from accurate and very misleading. The substantial yearly charge billed upfront creates a misleading impression that cancellation is possible on a monthly basis. Honest Girl says, save your time and money. Been a client of Matthew's for many years, since 2016, and I'm still single and currently in the process of freezing my eggs after wasting years following his advice. I went to the in-person retreat in Miami, which was okay. However, all the online products I bought were overpriced and a waste of money. The membership content is pre-recorded and wishy-washy, fluffy advice. I'm done with him and his advice. It did nothing for me but wasted my time and money. And this is the primary objection that I have when people like to kind of hit back and say that Matthew Hussey's advice has helped them. I'm not disputing the possibility that people could get benefit from his advice. Not everything that he says is terrible, and some of it is quite good. In fact, his content has actually improved markedly since he got his brother, Stephen Hussey, who has a PhD in philosophy. His brother has since become a writer for his team, and the content has improved a lot since then. But it's nothing that you can't find for free. It's nothing that is anything, it's not far beyond just basic common sense. It's all very kind of, if you really look at it, none of it is very profound or deep. He just has a way of delivering the content which people find very palatable. But if you choose to part with your money to buy his products, you're going to be charged far, far more than the advice is worth, and you're possibly going to get scammed as well. And this is what I want people to be aware of. So the next review says, subscription scam. They say send an email to us if you would like to cancel your subscription, but when you do, they don't cancel, and next month you see another payment in your credit card. Horrible, horrible scam. So we've heard this before. These are all recent reviews. These are all of these reviews are within the last 3 or 4 months since the previous video that I did about this topic. Natalie says cancellation process is a con. Process to cancel your free trial is deliberately unclear. There is only an option to deactivate your account online. You assume this is to cancel your subscription, but that isn't the case. You receive an automated email the next day explaining this and asking you to confirm your cancellation. No refund is given if you are charged between deactivating and responding to their email. I then emailed several times about a refund and got no response. I contacted a different email address on their website, did receive a response explaining it is not our policy to offer refunds. However, I explained through several emails what had happened. Through this entire process, I was then charged the following month, but they only agreed to refund me 1 month as some kind of goodwill gesture. Appalling and deceitful service, especially for something so expensive. Little XX at the end of every email, particularly galling. Okay, so yes, this is exactly the experience that I had. I was charged in what I consider to be a completely fraudulent way. And when I pushed back, there were several emails back and forth between me and the customer service agent where she kind of assured me that it wasn't possible for the charge to have been, a mistake, or that I must have bought something from the website for my credit card to have been charged. And I knew this was not true. And the refund that I got was kind of like as a goodwill gesture from their side, or that's how it was kind of pitched to me, as if they were doing me some kind of massive favor, even though I never authorized the charge in the first place. And it all feels like this kind of power play, between you and the company, where they make you feel like you are really the one who's just so lucky to be getting a refund, or to have been privileged enough to kind of being able to buy something from the website, and they're only giving you a refund because you're kind of making so much trouble about it. And yeah, the customer service agent that I dealt with also had this like very condescending tone to her emails, and had the little X at the bottom of the email as well. And I'm like, I'm not your friend. We don't know each other. This whole, it was like this very kind of cutesy tone that she took with me that I really didn't appreciate. So the review goes on to say, content provided in the service is good, but consider very carefully if you actually want to be tied into this service. So that's my argument. The content isn't awful. It's not as great as I think Matthew Hussey would like you to believe, but it is very overpriced, and he does run a scam on his website. So for those of you who are wondering, why do I talk about Matthew Hussey? Why do I criticize him? This is why. So the next review says, not clear on amounts deductible. I downloaded an app and paid for some text advice, which I had no idea how to actually access because it is not clear. With my hectic life, I then forgot about it. Then I found out a few weeks later I've been charged £54 for what? And apparently it comes out every month. I can't afford that, being a vulnerable single mother. I have no idea how to cancel it. I've been trying to find some contact details if anyone can help me. If it was a subscription, I'd be able to cancel, but I don't actually know what I'm paying for. Surely that's illegal, as it's not a contract. I'll call my bank today. All of this is just stressful and misleading and a waste of my time. I won't be fooled again. So as you can see, people are all kind of saying exactly the same thing. They're all referring to the $69.95 dollar amount, or £54, which is roughly equivalent to $70, that gets charged from your account anytime you buy anything. And a lot of people are having trouble canceling or accessing refunds, and it's just a giant scam, basically. But today in this video, I want to focus on something a little bit different but related. And I might break this video up into two parts because the podcast that we're going to listen to is pretty long. Those of you who watched Matthew Hussey's 30-day confidence challenge, or my video that I did on the 30-day confidence challenge, might recall that Matthew Hussey talks about his friendship with Ed Mylett. So for those of you who don't know, Ed Mylett is a self-help coach who is as big a scammer or grifter as they come. He's like this very, very typical hun bro, robot type, big, massive big guy. People speculate that he takes steroids. I wouldn't be surprised because like his whole physique isn't really natural. Um, and he is very big as a motivational speaker in the MLM space. Um, and Matthew Hussey has come out, you know, very publicly and talked about his friendship with Ed Mylett. Now, I think this is interesting because, you know, birds of a feather scam together. Now, Ed Mylett has kind of done a bit of a cleanup of his reputation in recent years. He kind of pitches himself as very much like a motivational speaker, self-help guru, coach, author type. You get the impression. Very much in the same vein as kind of Tony Robbins or Tom Bilyeu, or you know, Grant Cardone, one of these. They're all scammers. All of them are scammers and grifters, and Ed Mylett is no exception. Now, Ed Mylett has also come out and talked about the fact that he is worth several hundreds of millions of dollars, or this is what's been speculated, but he has made no secret of the fact that he has made a huge amount of money over the course of his career. He's never really super clear about how he made his fortune. He seems to have come from very, very humble beginnings. But for those of you who might not know, because it's not very well known, and Ed Mylett certainly doesn't want you to know, Ed Mylett started off his career in the in a financial MLM / pyramid scheme called WFG, World Financial Group, in which he scammed lots of vulnerable people out of lots of money, you know, as is always the case in MLMs, which are really legal pyramid schemes. And there are videos on the internet where you can see Ed Mylett peddling his wares and practicing very, very scammy sales tactics. I'm not going to go too far into that because Always Marco has done an absolutely brilliant job of breaking down a lot of Ed Mylett's scammy sales tactics that he used to use when he was in WFG, and I'm going to link his channel and videos in the description of this video. So I am obviously very, very much against MLMs, multi-level marketing companies. Like most ethical people in this day and age, I think the problems with MLMs are very widely known, and the anti-MLM movement has done absolutely fantastic work in exposing MLMs. And so people like Ed Mylett, who Ray Higdon is another good example of someone who was initially in MLMs, made a lot of money, and then transitioned into like a coaching, motivational speaker kind of role. And Ed Mylett is a similar sort of person. Eric Worre is another example. So those of us who are really against MLMs and the harmful practices that it perpetrates, and the fact that the vast majority of people who get involved in MLMs either don't make any money or lose money, often a lot of money. And these are often poor and vulnerable people who get tricked into joining multi-level marketing schemes and then, you know, lose a great deal of money, as well as many other things that they often lose, like relationships and marriages. And, you know, it's heartbreaking. It's awful. And so those of us who are against MLMs are also really against these coaches or these kind of motivational speakers who really prey on people who are in MLMs, kind of selling them a dream, selling them completely false hope that they can actually make it big in MLMs. And so, you know, people like Ed Mylett and Eric Worre and Ray Higdon and all of these people are really in many ways just as unethical as those who try to recruit people into the MLM in the first place. And this is what Ed Mylett still does to this day. He still coaches people in MLMs, often at very high fees. He is really as shady and as slimy as they come. And maybe one day I'll do a bit of a deep dive into him, but I'm not sure if I will, because honestly, I just think Always Marco and also Camelia, who's another anti-MLM content creator, have done a brilliant job of showing you the type of person that Ed Mylett is. And so I find it very concerning and very telling that Matthew Hussey publicly aligns himself with a character like Ed Mylett. And again, as if we needed further confirmation, it just tells you, you know, where Matthew Hussey's integrity truly lies, and what he truly cares about, which in my opinion is really just, making money and being as kind of influential and famous as possible. But I do think it's interesting that both Ed Mylett and Matthew Hussey are these coaches who have like massively cleaned up their act in recent years. And they've now kind of gone for more of like a squeaky clean image where they try to distance themselves from anything sort of that seems scammy or slimy, and they try to present themselves as like these really kind of the boy next door kind of wholesome guys that you can just trust, and who are just have your best interests at heart and all this sort of thing. And yet both of them have like really scammy, questionable beginnings. Ed Mylett has his beginnings in this really disgusting MLM pyramid scheme called WFG. And Matthew Hussey, for those of you who don't know, actually started off as a coach for men in the pickup artistry community. So yes, you heard me correctly, and you can go and look this up for yourself. Matthew Hussey started as a pickup artist coach, and he quickly realized that he preferred coaching women and had more success coaching women, probably because women make up a larger chunk of people who, buy dating coaching products and who go in for self-help advice. He probably realized there was more money to be made. And also he's probably more successful with women because they tend to like him because he is good looking and charming. And so Matthew Hussey has like gradually cleaned up his image and kind of gone for like a very squeaky clean kind of good guy kind of image as time has gone on. I'm not saying that he is that it's a complete act. But I do think you have to bear in mind that a lot of this is just a facade in order to sell a product. It's, the extent to which Matthew Hussey really believes his own hype and really does care about his audience, I think is really questionable, especially when you consider the fact that he regularly scams them out of money and charges exorbitant fees for his retreat. He can't seem to get through a single interview or podcast or video without talking about the retreat. So just a quick reminder, the retreat costs around about $5,000 or $6,000 for just shy of 6 days of a kind of a seminar workshop type of event. There is no hotel, no food, snacks, no drinks, nothing is included with that, just simply your attendance at the event. So you let me know, even those of you who are Matthew Hussey fans, you let me know whether you think his advice is worth that amount. But anyway, what we're going to listen to today is an interview that Ed Mylett did with Matthew Hussey on his podcast in 2019. And I do think it's telling. I think it gives us a little bit of insight into these two men and into their friendship. And some of the things that we're going to hear are, I think, quite enlightening in a way that maybe Matthew Hussey and Ed Mylett might not realize. This interview is over an hour long, so I am probably going to break this up into a 2-part series. But without further ado, let's let's get into the interview. So it's on Ed Mylett's podcast, which is called The Ed Mylett Show. Right. Okay. Let's have a listen.
Hey friends, are you struggling to attract and retain top talent? If you're worried about recruiting and retention, consider Insperity, a leading HR provider.
So I just right off the bat, I have to say, I think that it's fascinating and again, very telling that despite Ed Mylett's hundreds of millions of dollars, he still takes sponsorships on his podcast. I just personally, I just find that slimy.
They'll help you improve hiring and compensation practices so you can spend more time growing your business and less time on HR. Visit Insperity.com and download their free ebook on how to build your dream team. Don't let a lack of talent hinder your success. See how Insperity provides HR that makes a difference at Insperity.com.
Pretty sure that music is 30 Seconds to Mars. Wouldn't that be copyrighted? Is Ed Mylett using their music with their permission, I wonder? Interesting. But yeah, that's definitely 30 Seconds to Mars that he's using there in the intro to his show. I do wonder if he has permission to use that music. I would hope so.
This is the Ed Mylett Show.
Welcome back to Max Out, everybody. By popular demand, this man to my left is here today. We did a survey. I didn't even told you this off camera. We did a survey, and I asked for the top 20 people wanted to have on the show and the topics, and your name kept coming up and coming up and coming up. And so,
what's interesting about that is if you saw my video, the roast of Matthew Hussey featuring the dating guy says the exact same thing, that when he was asked about people whom he should roast, Matthew Hussey's name kept coming up again and again. Different audiences, I suppose.
You're welcome, everybody, even before we begin. And if our conversation during the interview is anywhere near as good as it's been before the interview, this is going to change some lives. So Matthew Hussey is here today. Thank you, brother, for being here.
Thanks for having me here.
Those of you that don't know, we're talking about somebody with 300 million plus views on YouTube, 4.5 million plus people in your Facebook group, one of the largest followings in what I'd call the life strategy space, and specifically an expert on relationships. And it's a topic so many people have wanted me to talk about on the show.
I just think it's worth mentioning that the only people who ever call Matthew Hussey an expert on relationships are Matthew Hussey himself and Matthew Hussey's associates and friends. No evidence is ever provided to back up the claim that he is actually an expert in relationships. At the time of this podcast, Matthew Hussey was not married, had never been married or engaged, and had never had a serious relationship of any length, and had never had any kind of formal training in, psychology or relationship, advice of any sort. So I point this out because I just think it's very important to be aware of these sorts of random claims that just get thrown out by self-help gurus. Most of the time, they are self-proclaimed experts, and there is nothing actually to back the claim up, really, aside from their own success in terms of being influential and in terms of being famous. And there is nothing else to support the idea that they're an expert.
And so I brought in, I think, the best person on spinning Earth to discuss this. So here we go.
Thank you. I'm excited.
I am too, brother. Yeah. And it's going to go everywhere today, guys. We're going to go all over the place. But I have one personally I wanted to ask you. Everyone's always looking for the one in a relationship. Do you think there's such a thing?
No. No. I the one, to me, the problem with that argument is the same with the idea of your calling. I do believe that in business, we find certain businesses or certain paths that meet our criteria. Like, let's say everyone has a criteria for what I need to feel fulfilled in my career life.
Sure.
I might find something that meets my criteria on a very high level. Like for me, what I do is I travel the world speaking to audiences, I do a lot of radio, I write. Ultimately, I'm connecting and sharing ideas, and that's what I love doing. I also get to run a business as part of that, which I really love. There's an entrepreneurial streak to me. There's all these aspects to it that make it an organization and a life path that I really love.
Okay.
But every now and again, someone in my event will tell me, like, you found your calling.
Yes.
And I always think that's a dangerous idea, because now what you have, and I'm sure you must experience this a ton in your work, is people coming to you saying, Ed, it's great that you know what you're doing and you've had this path for a long time, but I haven't found my thing.
Yes.
I haven't found my calling. And that, I think, is a really corrosive idea, because instead of bringing passion to the thing that we're doing, we look for the thing we're doing to bring us passion.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
And so I think people...
Am I the only one who feels really put off by all the little background noises that Ed is making? Oh my gosh, yes. Oh wow. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Like, just let Matthew speak. You know, like, it's these little, like, these stacking up noises that Ed makes throughout this podcast are just so off-putting to me. You know, and what Matthew Hussey is saying here, what did he say? It's not your passion that brings about your calling, but your calling that brings about your passion. I mean, you know, I think that's great, but both Ed Mylett and Matthew Hussey are multi-millionaires, like many times over. And so it's all fine and dandy for them to talk about calling and passion, but it's an incredibly privileged position that they are speaking from. You know, I do have to question how much they can really relate to the average person, asking them about finding their passion and their calling. It's you know, a lot of the success of people like Matthew Hussey and Ed Mylett comes A, from scamming people, and B, from luck, and kind of hitting it big in a way that doesn't necessarily have to do with talent. And so I always find it like a little bit galling when they talk so like in such a cavalier and offhand way about what people should be doing with their lives and their, you know, when it comes to passion and calling. You know, like, really, did you, you know, when you were a youngster, did you really grow up wanting to charge people thousands of dollars just to hear you trot out a few platitudes? Anyway.
We'll do the same thing with relationships. I don't believe there's one calling for anyone. I'm like you're living many business lives.
Sure, so
right?
Yeah.
I'm going to live many lives in business. I'm going to live many lives in coaching. I'll end up talking about all sorts of different things over the course of my life. I don't want to be attached to this idea that this is the only thing I can be. And in relationships, I don't believe that, you know, on a planet of 7 billion people, there's this one person that we're somehow ordained to meet. I just think there are lots of potential ones. The important thing for people to remember is, firstly, the one for you, the person that you're going to end up being with, which I think people become the one based on what we build with them, right? So I do believe in the one in the sense that we choose one.
Yes.
We choose who this person is going to be,
Yes.
or we may choose it many times over and get it wrong. But ultimately, when we're looking for long term, we choose someone and we go for it. But I say this to women who come to me all the time, is the one is both, the right person for you is both right and ready, firstly.
Ready.
Right and ready, because a lot of people say, oh, he's so great for me, but he just says he's not ready, then he's not the right person for you. We can't have, he's right for me, but he's not ready. The right person is both right and ready. And secondly, the one is someone who's going to really, you two It's not just a feeling, it's not just a connection. The two of you are actually going to build something together. You can connect with thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people in this world. But the number of people who will actually build with you is far more limited. And we have to graduate from the thinking that, you know, I always say there's 4 stages of importance in a relationship. There's admiration, which is no relationship. That's just, I see.
Didn't Ed just initially ask Matthew, do you believe in the one? And Matthew is now going off on an entirely different tangent, which isn't really answering the question and is kind of word salady in my opinion. I mean, essentially, this is what I'm talking about when I say that he gives really, you know, really basic and common sense advice. And if you find it valuable, then, you know, I'm delighted for you. But he's talking about how you can potentially build connections with thousands of people, but only a certain few will actually want to build a relationship with you, and a person has to be both right and ready. It's these very vague, unfalsifiable claims that he's making, which are kind of really common sense, but they sound really good when Matthew kind of spins them in his own way that makes them sound kind of a lot more complex and, you know, profound than what they actually are. And he still hasn't really answered the question about, you know, why is there not the one for you? And I mean, I suppose in a way he's talked about how there isn't just because there are 7.5 billion people on the planet, it's, you know, ridiculous to think that there is just one person for all of us, because there are many people we could potentially build connections with. But I would have liked him to have stayed a bit more on topic and dug into that a bit more. What is it that makes people and women believe that there is only one right person? How do they get that idea? He could have used this as an example, like as an opportunity to talk about how Hollywood and romantic comedies and books and our culture sells us this myth that there is just one right person, and how this damages people in their search for love, and all this kind of thing. And instead he's waffling on. It just kind of a bit frustrating.
You from afar, and maybe you're beautiful, maybe you have, you know, you've achieved a lot, maybe you've got a charisma, smile, whatever. I just admire you.
Okay.
First stage, not that important.
Okay.
We can admire many people. Second stage is connection. That's mutual admiration. And also we share certain ideas about life. We have a chemistry, a connection, whatever you want to call it. But there's genuine mutual interest, connection. Third stage is,
again, like he's waffling all over the show to the point that his thoughts are not really making sense. He's saying that, you know, you could have similar ideas about life, but that's the same as chemistry and connection. The two are really not the same at all. This is the sort of thing that's, you know, self-help coaches like Matthew Hussey do that I just really struggle to get any value out of, because he's honestly, just tell me if you find this a coherent train of thought to follow, because I find it really kind of tangential and he's just kind of jumping all over the show.
Commitment. We have a connection, but it goes beyond that. I'm saying, yes, I want to be with you and do this. And you're saying, yes, I want to be with you too. Right. Let's do this. So commitment is we both actually say yes. We don't.
Wow, that's profound. Both people actually have to want to be in the same relationship. Like, who would have ever thought? You know, I was just going to go out and choose someone and force them to be in a relationship with me. Who would have actually ever thought that you both need to say yes to the same relationship? It's really deep stuff, Matthew.
Just say, we're interested, yes. Right. And then the fourth stage, because I used to want to believe love conquers all, right? That old idea, love is enough, love is all you need. Well, actually it's not. Because we know plenty of relationships where two people are in love, but they're not compatible, which is where the fourth stage comes in, which is compatibility. Okay. So now we're not just saying yes to each other, we actually can function well together in a relationship. 4 stages. And when you have all 4 of those stages, you have someone who has the potential to be your one. But it needs all 4 stages, and you don't get to sit in someone with stage 2 of connection, which is the world we live in right now. This is one of the things I see more than anything else is we both have a we have the best connection. All right, well, what's the problem? Well, he just doesn't want a relationship. Then what are we talking about?
You don't have commitment.
Yeah.
Right? Yes.
Then this isn't.
Right.
This is not for you.
Right.
Like, this isn't the thing, but you're making it the thing because you like the person, and that's a very dangerous thing.
See, the things I love about you, and now obviously a large chunk of mine is because they requested you know you, and so we're going to go in all these directions today. But for the ones who don't, the most wonderful people to me in life take very complicated things and make them understandable and simple, which is exactly because relationships, connecting with other human beings is a complicated dynamic. You have this unbelievable way.
Not really. When you connect with the right person, it's not really that complicated. And if it is, if things are constantly going wrong in your relationship, it's most likely because that person is just not right for you. But of course, the likes of Ed Mylett and Matthew Hussey need to have you believe that it is hopelessly complicated and difficult to navigate so that they can sell you products and courses and advice. Because if you really copped on to how simple it was and the idea that we actually all have the tools that we need inside ourselves via our feelings and desires, and that we wouldn't need them as much as they want us to believe we do.
Of articulating and distilling it down into some simple things that as you say them, everyone driving or watching this right now is like, that's true, that's true, that's true. It goes through the validation test almost when we put through it. So thank you for that. And I think it is especially true in the business sense, which you just said, where I haven't found my calling, as if there's only one. That's sort of a scarcity mindset to the extent that you're thinking, boy, you could spend your whole life searching for this one human out of 7 billion. You'd be in big trouble, right? And so
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
It's very, very dangerous.
If there's one thing that MLMers and MLM coaches love to rail against, it's the scarcity mindset. And if any of you who are familiar with any of this sort of content will know that. Anything that doesn't work out, or if there's a problem with anything, it's because you have a scarcity mindset. And they will apply that to literally any problem in the world. It's because you have a scarcity mindset. Oh, your MLM business isn't succeeding. Well, it's your scarcity mindset that's to blame. Oh, you haven't found the right person for you yet, or your relationship's not working out. You have a scarcity mindset. They literally will trot it out as the reason for any problem in the world.
Dangerous, because it stops you. That becomes an excuse for not just going into something now.
Right.
Like we like to sit. So many of us, we've all done this. Like Tony Soprano said, more is lost in indecision than in wrong decision. Right.
Yes.
We sit in this parked car on the halfway up the block. And we sit in this car that can give us answers if we get it moving. But stationary, we don't get any answers. And we're trying to peek around the corner at the end of the block. Should I go right or should I go left? Should I do this or should I do that?
Yeah.
Well, answers are a reward for doing shit.
Yeah.
Right?
See, again, this is an incredibly privileged thing to say, that more is lost in indecision than in making the wrong decision, and that people's problem is that they just don't want to act. It's a very, very privileged thing to say. It's a very easy thing for these two white men who are multimillionaires and who have millions of dollars to fall back on if they make a mistake or if they make a wrong decision in their business or in their life that costs them money. This is a very, very different reality from what someone who has, children to feed and clothe and people who depend on them and who's on a minimum wage income. It's a very, very different set of circumstances from what that person is facing, who really can't afford to take any sort of major risks in their lives because it could have disastrous consequences. And yet self-help gurus, the likes of Ed Mylett and Matthew Hussey, just love to blame people for not being able to take action or not kind of dreaming big enough or not making a decision and stepping out of their comfort zone, when for people who are, just surviving and who are not in the incredibly privileged position of these two guys, taking big risks is just simply not an option. And it's not feasible or reasonable to ask them to do that. And it's not a mindset thing. It's a survival thing. But you'll never hear that from the likes of Ed Mylett or Matthew Hussey, because they won't acknowledge their own privilege ever. They will always blame you for, not taking the sort of risks that are very easy for them to take because they're in such a privileged, wealthy position themselves. And they don't acknowledge the circumstances of the people in their audience. And that's just yet another reason why I find it so repulsive, this sort of advice. Not only is it incredibly bland and vague and just very kind of fluffy and on the surface, but it's also coming from an incredibly privileged place. Again, Matthew Hussey talking about relationships, giving relationship advice to men and women. He's an incredibly good-looking guy who has been genetically blessed, aside from the fact that he is extremely wealthy. And the things that might be easy for him to do are not at all easy for a lot of people to achieve. And he really never addresses that, the fact. He never addresses his own privilege, because if he did, that might start to make people doubt whether what he has to say is actually really that valuable.
You don't get answers sitting there, and people do this in business, they also do it in relationships. We sit in a parked car. I don't know whether to continue this relationship or not. I don't know whether, and then we ask a passenger, someone who knows no more than we do. Hey, my best friend, should I be in this relationship? Should I leave it? And they go, no, you should leave or whatever. But then we don't take their advice, so we look at another passenger. What do you think, Mum? Should I stay? Should I leave? And then we sit in this parked car. You do, I've heard Tony Robbins talk about, one answer to getting clarity in a relationship that you're not sure about is giving.
Great. So he's not only aligning himself with Ed Mylett, but he's also aligning himself with Tony Robbins, who has had multiple allegations of sexual assault against him, and who is just a very, very slimy human being. Really great company you keep here, Matthew.
Your all for 3 months or 6 months. See what happens when you truly give your all. And then if it can't work, then you get out. But that's another way of saying, get the car moving.
Yeah.
Get answers by doing.
Yes.
And then see. And it's the same in business. Stop asking which is the perfect path. Experiment, 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 experiment.
It's all very well for you to say experiment, 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 experiment if you have unlimited finances. Most people are not in that position. Are you really that, privileged and short-sighted, and are you really in such a bubble that you cannot see that, Matthew?
See what works. I started out as a one-to-one coach. Like I was, 19 years old, 20 years old, and I was working with people one-to-one.
Yeah.
And I thought that's what I wanted to do until I did it, and I kind of hated it.
Yeah.
I didn't enjoy it. I liked giving ideas, but the whole 5-6 clients a day coming through the door, me spending an hour with each.
Must be nice being a 19 or 20-year-old coach and having 5 or 6 clients a day coming through a day to choose from. Does he really think that's the reality for most people starting off in a coaching or therapeutic business? Most certified counselors who have studied for 4 years and done an internship and practical work to become trained and certified and qualified take years to build up a practice where they're even able to make a sustainable income. Therapists, same story. It takes years to build up enough of a reputation and enough of a clientele that you can actually support yourself doing that full time for many certified professionals. And here he's talking about being 19 or 20 and having 5 or 6 clients a day. And he's in this, cushy, privileged position where he could just decide, no, actually, I don't actually like that. I think I'll do something else. I mean, how many people are actually in that position that, have the luxury of saying that? I really kind of have to wonder what connections Matthew had even at that stage, or what he was doing even at that stage to be having 5 or 6 clients a day at the age of 19 or 20. I mean, what the hell did he even have to teach, or what knowledge did he even have to impart at that age that many clients would even be willing to pay him for? Either he had some like really fierce connections who were able to hook him up with just tons and tons of clients, or he was doing something unethical, or else this is just an out and out lie. It's one of those, but this is definitely not the reality for most people who think about starting a business.
Doing that, I realized there are far better people. There are people who absolutely should dedicate their lives to doing that. It's just not something that I think I'm cut out for.
Yeah.
But what I did learn by doing that was I do love speaking to groups. So then what's born out of that is the first ever, I was like 21, the first ever mastermind I did was born out of, I've got these 25.
He's at a mastermind at the age of 21. Again, like, what on earth did he even have to teach, or what of value did he even have to impart that people would pay the sort of money that people pay for masterminds? Who would pay a 21-year-old for that? So someone who has no real experience and, no certifications in what they're doing. I mean, I know Matthew now has an MBA, but at that age, he certainly didn't. Who was paying him mastermind type coaching fees when he was 21? I mean, as I say, I just think this is either a lie, or else he was just incredibly well connected. And those are the sorts of connections that the average Joe just does not have access to. And of course, Matthew Hussey is not going to acknowledge this. He's not going to acknowledge any of his privilege or any of the, ways that he might have got his start. I've been talking for nearly an hour now, and I don't want to make this video too long at this stage. So I'm gonna break up this podcast into at least 1 or 2 other videos that we can talk about, because I really want to delve into this a little bit more. I really want to talk about this. No one is really talking about Matthew Hussey's kind of problematic connections, or his endorsement by really shady people, and his friendships with these self-help coaches. And I really think it needs to be talked about, and I really think a lot of this self-help advice needs to be debunked. So this is something I really want to talk about more, and I will make a part 2 hopefully fairly soon. But thank you for listening. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate it. And if you have thoughts or anything that you want to add, if you want to agree or disagree, or if you have anything to say about this, or if you have any information that I haven't mentioned about either of these 2 guys that I've spoken about, Ed Mylett or Matthew Hussey, please feel free to leave it in the comments. And take care of yourself, and I will see you next time. Bye, everyone.